Welcome, everyone. Thank you for spending an hour of your Thursday, of your busy schedule, to attend this particular Q webinar, which is on what is in an automation tester's suitcase. I hope you'll get a lot of insights into this webinar, and hopefully you will enjoy this particular webinar. So I would like to talk about our speaker, Laveena. Laveena is a test manager at EasyJet. So she will be there to uh, walk you through the webinar and take your questions live. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Laveena Ramchandani. Laveena is a test manager at EasyJet. She is a blogger, speaker, trainer, and a host. She holds a business computing degree from the Queen's Mary University of London. She has an industry experience in retail, insurance, residential, and BI. Laveena also blogs a lot at Laveena Ramchandani 01 at medium.com. So do go ahead and catch hold of her blogs. So now I hand it over to Laveena to take the proceeding and the webinar.
Hi everyone, welcome to my talk on your automation suitcase and what this should include when you're planning to automate. So today I'll take you over all the tips and tricks around what an automation tester should have and how it's going to help you to automate and have a smooth process within your team as well. So without further ado, let's get started. So I've been in the testing industry for over 9 years now, exactly 9.5 years. I have studied computer science. I'm a blogger. You can find my blogs on Medium. I'm a speaker as well at many conferences. I host events around testing. I'm a trainer at the Coders Guild where we train new testers. And I am working at EasyJet as a test manager where I focus on the digital aspect of EasyJet as well as the data science side of things. So today's agenda, where do we start from? The testing pyramids, the shift left strategy, automation test strategy and what it should include, because sometimes it gets confusing as to do we include exactly the same things as we have on our test strategy, or do we include something more specific? So these are the things we need to think about. The tools and resources that might be handy for you. So I found this really, really interesting. It's a market comparison. $15 billion are spent in automation. This was in 2020, so I am expecting it to be higher in 2022. Automation testing market size exceeded US dollars 15 billion in 2020 and is anticipated to grow at a CAGR of over 16% from 2021 to 2027. The market growth is attributed to increasing inclination of enterprises towards the adoption of advanced testing methods such as DevOps and Agile methodologies. So I found this statistic really interesting because it enhances what I'm talking about today, and hopefully I can grasp some of your interest so that you can also get involved in the automation side of things. So what is test automation? So test automation is the best way to increase the effectiveness, test coverage, and execution speed in software testing. So we get asked a lot of the times in interviews, and even I ask at interviews, what should we automate? How should we automate? Have we automated before? Have we created a framework from scratch? So these are the sort of things we need to think and plan accordingly, understanding what resources we already have in place, or do we need to research different tools? Even researching tools for automation is a fun task because you explore the tool. You become an advocate for that tool, that you've used it and it's interesting, it's giving you the results that you're looking for, and how is it going to help reach goals, and how is it going to work with the values within your team and your company as well. So let's look at where do we start from. So this is going to be a longer slide, but I will try and explain and take you over an example as well. So where do we start from? So first of all, why do we automate? So automation is fun. I've done it. I used to be scared from coding, but then I thought, let me put myself out there because everything is about automation. This is back in 2017, where our team decided to completely switch from manual to automation. And that's where my heartbeat started going really fast because I had the imposter syndrome that I do not know how to code, even though I did computer science, but I was not really keen on the coding side. One thing I must point out here is sometimes if coding is not natural inside you, it's good to try. But if you know that it's not something that you're interested in, maybe it's good to see other areas, such as be part of the strategy for automation, be part of what sort of tools we want to select, be part of the selection process and research process and the creation of a strategy rather than coding. Because sometimes what we feel is, like myself, because of the market trend, I wanted to get into automation coding, but it didn't work well for me. I understood that I'm better as an exploratory tester and semi-automation tester, although I do automate sometimes as private little projects on the weekends or so, sometimes when I feel like I should learn a new kind of skill. But it's not something that comes in naturally with me. So I just wanted to tell all of you, if it's not naturally there for you, try and move that focus onto something that comes naturally to you. And that could not, that potentially is not automating your tests, but potentially working on a strategy, working on a process, what to automate, what not to automate, checking your scenarios, validating things, and pairing in that way. Because again, you're still part of it, but maybe you're focusing your important areas in important aspects and your qualities in an area where they fit better. So don't feel disheartened if you can't code or you're finding it quite difficult. So again, why should we automate? So automation is fun. It gets things done faster, increases the accuracy and reduces error. It promotes employee development, and you focus on real testing as well. So things like when you have to do repetitive tasks, why not automate them? If you have a massive regression pack, why not automate it? Because you get a quicker feedback loop as well. So think along those lines. What should we automate? That's a tricky one. Again, interview question a lot. What to automate and what not to automate is the important bit, divided into two tasks. We should not automate everything because things like accessibility, the touch and the feel, the look and the feel of an application cannot be automated. That's better if someone within the usability team or someone within the design team can come and actually see an application and see that it does look and feel like what we wanted, or even your customer. So don't automate that bit. But what you can automate is things that are repetitive, as I mentioned, things that don't change constantly, like cosmetic bits on your application, such as buttons. If they may be changing again and again, or a description may be changing on that button again and again, that's not worth automating it, because you're going to be using your efforts in an area that keeps changing, and you're not using your efforts in an area where you should be focusing on. So focus on those first two aspects: what to automate, what not to automate, and then why do you want to automate. Now, the third question is when to automate. So I would like to share a few slides here with you. So I like to do the shift left, be involved earlier in the process, so that in the part of 3 Amigos session or planning session, you can ask these sort of questions when a feature comes in and decide, should we automate this one, or should we just manually explore this feature or not? So that's where you could ask this question earlier, so that you can plan your automation test scenarios at an earlier stage, and then you can start doing either BDD or TDD, or even make your automation part of CI/CD pipelines and DevOps as well. So let's look at the next slide. So when to automate. Basically, shift left is one where you can, as I mentioned, is important because it's crucial in agile teams, as it allows artifacts to be properly validated through clearer and better communication. The idea is to find bugs and fix them as soon as possible. The sooner, the better. So I would suggest, if you are automating within your teams, if you were asked when to automate, I would suggest do it as soon as possible, because as you've just read, you can find bugs sooner as possible, and you can test edge cases as well. So the advantages here are better and clearer requirement stories if you're involved sooner, leads to development of testable features and increases testability if that's one of your KPIs as well. Bugs detected sooner reduces fixed costs, because if you detect these bugs sooner as you're automating rather than in production where you might have to raise an incident and all of that process, you're saving time to your team, you're adding quality to your team, so that's important. Prevent bugs at the end of development cycle and release moment. So try and find them earlier so you can retest them through your automation scripts. Introduce and embed quality from the start. Reduce gaps between developing and testing. An early code review of automated tests, letting testers review assertion and usage of scenarios. So remember, if asked when to automate, you can start as soon as possible. There's nothing stopping us because we have test-driven development. You can script your tests, even though they will fail. Eventually, when the code is there from the developers, it will eventually pass. Or behavior-driven development as well, or shift left, or even make them part of your CI/CD pipelines and DevOps. The fourth question, where should you automate? So that's another interesting question. Now, most of you may have heard about the testing pyramids, or some of you may know it as the automation pyramid. So let's have a look at that. So there's tons of pyramids out there, and it's important to know where to automate. So as you can see, UI tests are at the top because they're expensive and they're slow. So it's important to automate those towards the end. You have your service tests, which are your integration level tests, which connect components with each other. So I would suggest have a chunky part there, and you should automate those tests. And unit tests at the bottom, which are quick, fast, and they run more in isolation, each component to its own. And that's where we can automate as well. Now, you have so many testing pyramids. I know that everyone in every company won't be following the similar style of pyramids. Some may be having a smaller service test, but a chunkier UI test because your product is fully UI based, and you may also need a bit of service test, but you may not need a lot of unit tests. Depends. It depends on your teams and your values. But some teams may be using a lot of manual test, exploratory on the top, as you can see the ice cream cone, which is what many teams use nowadays. Exploratory testing is super, super important. Don't always focus on automation and forget about the value in exploratory testing, because that can definitely help you find underlying bugs that may be sitting there, but you may have not found them. And automation tests can't find all the bugs either, just to let you know. So I would suggest the ice cream cone is a good example. You can have your manual test exploratory testing done there. You can have automated UI tests, such as on Cypress. You can have integration tests, and you can have unit tests at the bottom. Just make sure to understand what works best for you. That's when you will understand where to automate, and it will be more beneficial. Again, I found something really interesting was, which I mentioned, was every team works with a different pattern. So choose your pattern according to your requirements from your clients and what you can actually deliver as well. So when you're making your strategy, make sure to invest some time in understanding which sort of pyramid you're going to use and why. So that would be important as well. Next, on to who should automate. So this is a super interesting question. Sometimes when we ask who should automate, we get the answer of the testers. Or sometimes we just get the answer of developers. But in my opinion, developers and testers should both automate, because I personally believe in pairing a lot. We learn a lot from pairing. A developer may know really good values from basically coding in the past, and they can help you follow best practices. If you are testing on Cypress, maybe your developer has already done a lot of JavaScript, and they're currently scripting in JavaScript as well. So why not take their help and follow best practices and have a better code quality as well. So remember that, because it will help you refactor in the future. It will help you have lower flaky tests or no flaky tests, and your code will not smell. So remember to pair and collaborate as much as possible. I definitely also like to involve the product owners or the BAs as well, because if I have BDD test scenarios, then I would like them to skim over them and see how confident and comfortable they feel about them. So I like to demo and showcase as well, and that helps us basically showcase what we are doing as testers. So that's what I would say. How should we automate? So you might be wondering, what is the right framework for you or the tool to start learning automation? Where should you start from? So I'll go more in detail on that shortly, but there is no silver bullet. There is no right and wrong tool. The right framework or tool would be the one which you actually use, the one which your team understands. You need to buy in. You basically need a buy-in from your peers to have a successful test automation framework. So if you're starting from scratch, I would say keep your research really, really strong, have backing up, make sure that you have done a little POC as well to showcase to your team, so you get a better buy-in and everyone understands what you're trying to do. So from the very start, I would say focus on the details. And then when you're trying to basically sell the idea with a POC, your peers will understand what actually what the value of this is at the end of the day, and how this will help the team achieve goals and have a quality mindset, of course. So I would say focus on these things importantly. And there is no right or wrong tool or how you should do things. It's about what's available, first of all. If it's not available, then you research on different tools. And there's so much out there. There is absolutely so much. So many new tools, even probably right now there's a new tool being built. So I would suggest look into those. Speak to other people in the testing community who may be using these tools or may have done webinars. So why not pair with them and see how you can come up with the best solution for your team? Okay, so in terms of automation tests, something that I really like from Richard Broadshaw is trims. This is a mnemonic. So make sure when you are at the stage of writing your automation tests, they're targeted. So target to specific risk and automated on the lowest layer of testability. So from unit tests, for example. Reliable to maximize their value. Checks need to avoid flakiness. We need them to be deterministic. So if you avoid flakiness, that would be really good code. But if you have flakiness, then your code smells. You need to basically refactor a lot of things and understand how you can restructure what you already have. Maybe improve on your naming conventions, maybe have some tags, organize it as you see and as you think your team will benefit from. Have informative tests, so passing and failing checks need to be provided as much information as possible to aid exploration. So if you are getting failed tests, maybe put a log there or try and understand where the error actually happened, because sometimes just an error there in front of you does not make much sense. So try and see how you can help yourself in debugging the bug that has been found. Maintainable. So automated checks are subject to constant change. So we need a high level of maintainability. So if you write a beautiful code, you can maintain it well. If you write code with a lot of flakiness, a lot of code smells, there's no tag, there's thousands of tests, but they're not organized. And if you run the test, all thousands run, you may want to just pick different areas within your application and run them separately rather than all 1,000 being run, because that slows down the whole process and the CPU gets overloaded. So think about these things. Think about how you can organize everything in a better way so that it aids you all the time and you can maintain it. And speedy. Execution and maintenance needs to be as fast as the testability allows to achieve rapid feedback loops. So the better your automation test, the better feedback loop you get, especially with CI/CD pipelines. If you are trying to release something into your production environment and you are running your regression test on the CI/CD pipelines, we would definitely, I would definitely suggest that make sure your tests run fast, because if not, your release will be quite lengthy and bulky. So make sure that you can focus on that as well. On to the strategy then. So you may still be wondering about the true purpose of a test strategy and what's its goal. So first and foremost, it's to inform on the risk, capabilities, and functionality and arrive at a reliable, repeatable process of informing on those things. Second, it's a way to communicate your goals and plans. It's also a discussion starter that can sometimes be a springboard for a new proof of concept or a new technology to bring into your company. And finally, it's an auditing tool that allows you to go back and look at what you plan to do and compare it against what was actually done. So that's what your strategy is. Now, the important bit, what to include in your strategy. That's the important bit, because sometimes we may be good at coding, but not at making a strategy. So this is where people who are not good at coding could be part of. So there's opportunities for everyone, literally, within testing. So step one would be to define your high business value tests, then identify your risks, understand your technology, tools, and resources available. And if you don't have any of them, then make sure you mention around researching them. And whichever you finalize, you add those. Make sure your data is good. You have a golden data set, or if you are trying to use a dummy data, mention it. If it's going to be changed, mention it as well. Define your DevSecOps. If you're using those, consider your testing environment, tag your tests, look for testing efficiencies, and embrace agile tools. And step 6 would be super important, because you need to consider your testing environment and what that would require for you to start your automation testing and your entire suite to be running. So I would suggest connect with your environments team, your ops team, and try and understand what's required in that environment. Or if you're going to reuse an environment, is there any sort of extra enhancing that you need or not? Tag your tests, because if not, you'll be running thousands of tests in the future, and certain tests can be run separately or in parallel. So you need to understand and organize all of that. And that also helps saving your memory power and all of that, rather than having all tests run and everything becoming slower. So focus on all of that. Look at your testing efficiencies. That's super important. Be efficient, timely, cost saving. Don't try to add bulky tests which don't add value, or may be valuable right now, but in the next month or so, you don't need them. So think about them carefully and see how efficient you can become. Embrace your agile tools and learn from them and share with your team. That's what I would suggest. An efficient test automation strategy calls for automating tests at 3 different levels: unit, service, and UI. So we saw the pyramid, and I really liked this. So I thought I'll post it here and that you will enjoy that. So some best practices that I would like to share with you is the scope of automation needs to be determined in detail before you start the project. This sets expectations from automation right at the very early stage. Select the right automation tool. A tool must not be selected based on its popularity, but its fit to the automation requirement. Your developers may have already used a tool in the past, in a past company or project, which could be beneficial to start using as well, because that way they can help you set it all up, or you both compare. But if you are bringing something from scratch, make sure that it's valuable and it will be making use, basically will be able to deliver what you want to deliver. And choose an appropriate framework to work with. Some more scripting standards. Standards have to be followed while writing the scripts for automation. Some of them include create uniform scripts, comments, and indentation on the code. So those are the best practices. Clean code, as I say, beautiful code. Adequate exception handling, how error is handled on system failure or unexpected behavior of the application. User-defined messages should be coded or standardized, or error logging for testers to understand. Measure metrics. Success of automation cannot be determined by comparing the manual effort with the automation effort, but by also capturing the following metrics. Percentage of defects found sometimes. I wouldn't focus on the percentage of defects found all the time because defects are up and down. I would focus on other areas such as the time required for automation testing for each and every release cycle. That's important. Minimal time is taken for a release, for example. That's also a good KPI to have. And customer satisfaction is the most important one. And maybe the count of tests. How many codes are you merging? That's an important one as well that you can keep an eye on. And yeah, just refine as much as you can, because the more cleaner your code, the better it is, the more maintainable and speedy it will become. So think about the metrics and important measures that are important to you. For you, it may be important to have percentage of defects, but I personally believe that for me, it is not. So I would always say to look at other areas as well that are more important. Question, is it all automated? Not really. Everything can't be automated, but things that can be automated, you can automate, such as as I explained earlier, repetitive tasks, things that do not change all the time, regression tests, for example, some sort of accessibility checks as well. You can add integration tests and unit tests, UI tests as well. So I would suggest start with manual testing, always do some analysis, exploratory test, and the way you're going to be doing repetitive tests, you learn that yes, I can automate this one. This will add value if automated, and it will be quicker. Then after you've done exploratory tests, basically do exploratory testing to help build a critical test scenario stack that you can use. And thirdly, have a critical test automation suite with all your important tests. And again, this is a suite that will keep growing with important tests. So any other sort of small tests that don't require that much attention, I would always ask you to either reconsider or remove it completely if it's not adding value. Some resources for you to take away. I think Ministry of Testing is really useful. It's got a lot around automation, specific tools as well. So if you're using a specific tool, you can deep dive into it. Test Automation University, loads of courses there. Even if you want to do codeless, there's an option there too. So feel free to check that out. And your team is your best resource. Sometimes a developer may have done something in the past or use that tool. So why not work with them and make a better kind of test automation suite within the team, and become advocates together, not just the testers, but developers as well. So make use of all resources that you have. Sometimes we may have a member with us who knows a lot, but we may be researching outside. So recheck within your teams, involve them in your research, involve them in everything that you're doing, get a buy-in from your team as well, and then happy automation testing to all of you. So this was all that I wanted to share with you. Of course, feel free to reach out, and I'm more than happy to help you. Just think of the 6 questions that I asked you at the start. Pick any sort of project or pick any sort of item out there in the world, such as a vending machine. So what would you automate in a vending machine? You can automate the payment system, you can automate the amount of product that's in there, and when the product comes out, it shows you a minus from that stock that was in there. When should you automate? So that you decide as a team. Where to automate, you decide as a team as well after your research, and who should be involved, developers and testers, and how to automate. You need to check whether you're going to, which sort of framework you're going to use. So think of things that exist out there and see how you can apply automation. And then slowly with that basic example of a vending machine or an ice cream machine, you can basically try and bring a better kind of product in terms of automation test suite into your teams. So with that said, happy automation testing to all of you, and thank you for listening in. Feel free to reach out. I'm on Twitter and I'm on LinkedIn. My blogs are on Medium. And yes, if you do need any kind of knowledge, you want to catch up with me, you want to have a coffee with me, feel free to ping me, and I'll most happily have a catch up with you. Thank you very much. And now I'm open for any questions.
So it was an excellent session, Laveena. I'm sure
Thank
the
you.
audience would have enjoyed it. Uh, so if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A tab, and we'll get them answered.
Hi there.
Hi, hi. Nice to see you. Okay, so Philippi has a question like, how do you decide what level of automation to work on first? Thoughts there?
Okay. First of all, you need, yep. Thank you very much, Philip. First of all, you need to understand what do you want to automate and what are the reasons behind automating that. Is this going to actually add value, or is this just something that we want to do because the world's doing automation? So first of all, find the details of what you want to automate, and then you can decide the detail you want to go deep dive into. So sometimes what I see is developers automate their unit tests. So that's already being done. And then what you need to decide is if you're going on the middle level of the pyramid, the integration level, what do you want to automate there? Do you want to automate postman tests, or do you want to at least run postman separately but have other automated checks as well to check that layer? And then when it comes to the UI level, do you want to just run some sort of Cypress tests there, or you also want to integrate both UI and integration within Cypress because they use API checks there on Cypress? So maybe you can do a 2-in-1. So it all depends. My favorite answer, it depends. What are your core business requirements, and what are you trying to deliver, and how is your automation going to add to the quality mindset within your teams? So I would say do a workshop first with your team members and understand what can be automated, what could be automated, and what should not be automated. And that's where you will come up with best answers. And including your team is the best kind of thing, because sometimes I feel like when management is just deciding, team members are not involved. It feels like they're not being involved in things, and they feel like a bit lost sometimes that we were not involved. We were just told to automate. So it's best to kind of involve your team members because they come with experience as well as your management, and then make a POC or MVP product and work from there.
That's great. There's one question as well in the chat. So they'll ask, should we automate negative test cases?
Yes. I would say when you're doing a BDD or something, I would suggest don't. What I used to do with BDD was I would run a what do you call it, a positive test first, and then I would personally, when testing it, I would enter wrong details to see if my test is failing. So I would do sanity checks whilst doing my code, but I would not call them negative tests. I would say pick edge cases. Make sure your edge cases are part of your critical test suite, because these things can occur, and these things are important, and you don't want to go into production without making sure you've tested these. Sometimes what happens is we get ghost bugs. That's why they say make sure you do some edge case testing and validate the things from that point of view. So I would say when you're scripting your code, like a BDD or TDD, try and do positive test there itself, and try and do a negative there itself, but always end on a positive test case so that you are getting a pass. And then make sure you have a separate set of suites there for your critical edge cases. I hope that helps.
Yeah, definitely. So there is another question, like you mentioned about scripting standards. So following scripting standards, but when we work in a collaborative environment, how difficult it is to make sure everyone follows the scripting standards. What suggestion would you give there?
Yeah, I think this one is the most messiest one I've experienced, because everyone loves to code in their own way. They like to do things in their own way. And then when someone comes in to kind of refactor, clean up, make the code look beautiful, that's where they get the shock of their life. And they're like, oh my God, we have to clean so many things, and our tests are taking long. No wonder, because we were not following best practices. So I would suggest, when you are planning your automation within your workshop, you write a process as well, or give that training as to how do we write clean code. Now, the most useful people here would be your developers. Work with them because they work with best practices as much as possible. And obviously, developers also don't like to go back to their code and keep rechanging, refactoring. So they have this ability. So I would say collaborate with them, coordinate with them as much as possible. even pair with them on your first automated test, I would say. So I would definitely suggest follow patterns, follow good practices, and document them, because if there's a new person joining your team, they should also follow those same patterns and respect what's going on within the team already.
Great, awesome. So you're also a leader with EasyJet, and how do you convince someone, to have automation implemented in the project? Have you come across any tips that you could give someone? Because we have a varied experience here, and someone wants to convince the management to, include automation in their testing. So, what advice would you give them?
My advice would be, number one, you have to get a buy-in from your team. You need to showcase the value. Why do you want to spend time researching in this area? Why do you want to do this, and what is the outcome of all of this? So it's super important to, first of all, check those off. Then I would do a little bit of research into the tools we already have that we could start using. Or if we don't have tools, research a tool and come up with a POC to basically showcase that to your team. Once you can showcase that, I think you get a slight buy-in from your team, because and your managers, because they can see what you've done and how it can progress into something even better. Because once you have an automation test suite, you can actually do regression tests as well, part of it, and automate them. So why would we use a lot of effort in manual testing, which could be exploratory testing and automation testing? So that's the way I would try. So first of all, get the buy-in from them by explaining them things as to what is the value, how would we benefit, how would it save time and costs for us as well. So showcase everything, and if possible, make a small little strategy, maybe 1-2 page, explaining the things that you've researched, and see what they think, and try and get the team involved as well, because sometimes some positive feedbacks from the team members as well explains a lot to the managers that yes, they're enjoying doing automation research, they're enjoying being part of this new kind of enhancement that we want to bring within our testing area.
Great. So Richard just has an extension to the question regarding coding standards. So could you help in terms of what kind of coding standards do you tend to introduce in automation?
Yeah, so I would say follow best practices, have neat code, have good code reviews in the sense that have someone who has not coded this with you to review your code, because they may come up, they might, a new fresh pair of eyes might see something else. So make sure you have code reviewing processes. I would also suggest get a pair with your developer because they're coding day in, day out. So work with them. Other thing is flakiness. So write your code in a way so that there are less flaky tests. Flaky tests, what I mean by that is they may run sometimes, but they may fail at times. So we don't want that kind of situation, because that then basically means we are spending more time resolving things than actually improving things. I would say remove flaky tests. If you have right now a test suite of 1,000 tests, the practice I'm doing right now at my workplace is going through all of those 1,000 tests and dividing them into 3 buckets. Need them, could be useful, or bin them. Completely remove them out of it. Now, this could cause some sort of emotional chaos because people have been working on these scenarios. But at the end of the day, what are we trying to do, all of us? We are trying to have the best quality code and mindset within our teams. We are trying to advocate testing. So why would we need a flaky test? So tests that do not require any more within our suite. So I would say follow these kind of practices. I would also say on the side, whenever you get some time, do maybe a little project on the side and learn new practices, new best ways of writing code, because you learn from that too. And again, attend webinars where they're doing these sessions live. It definitely helps you learn as well. So, and another thing that I would like to add is add tags to your tests, because then it's easy to group 1,000, 2,000 tests, because you don't want to run tests in one go. If you want to focus on, say, for example, a payment side of things, why should you run debt tests? You should only run the payments. So I would suggest use tags. And one last thing that I would like to suggest is when you're planning your automated tests, make sure you can run these tests in parallel, because if they are running behind each other, they're taking longer. If they're running in parallel, they're running faster and they're cheaper. So these are the kind of tips I'd like to give.
Sure. Thanks for that. And I think these are valuable tips for us, definitely. Taking in consideration, and you also mentioned about, doing a good sort of a POC, having a solid criteria when you're doing a POC. So would you normally include when you're doing a POC specifically with test automation?
In my POC, I would have, first of all, a strategy to start off, because I need to give background knowledge of what I'm trying to do and why. I would then talk about my approach. Why did I approach it in this way? Why did I not approach it in another way that the market is using? I would then showcase a demo of what I've done, whether it's one test or maybe a suite of 6 tests, critical tests, and showcase them. What is the value in them? Show them even the logs, show them the way the errors are showing, if they are meaningful or not. Get all the feedback possible from that POC so that we can improve ourselves. And it's not just that, it's also involving the business analysts here, because they can learn as to what we are doing, especially when it's to BDD tests. They can understand because it's in layman terms. So try and get them involved. Basically do something so that in a collaborative manner, we can get a buy-in and we can get a tick. Now, if we get a tick now, it doesn't mean that we're going to finish this project in 1 year's time or something. It's just a project that's going on and on and on, and we are learning from it and we are improving on it. So getting the tick will give you, of course, that happiness, but working on it and making sure that the process around it is accurate is the most tough part. So if you do get a tick, feel happy, but make sure that you continue that quality advocacy throughout, not just for just starting automation. So that's what I would suggest, Josie.
Great, that's really nice. So you also mentioned about customer satisfaction index. Could you want to explain more, like what do you look at when you're computing this index or metrics?
Yeah, so the reason we focus on customers is because obviously we are bringing business from them. So if there's anything we can do from the testing perspective to give them an earlier view on what we are doing, why wouldn't any customer appreciate that? With that, we also get a quicker feedback loop, and we can improve on things sooner rather than later. So especially with Agile, you can bring new enhancements, new scopes inside your sprints. And if it's not part of your sprint at that moment, you can de-scope it, but put it in your backlog and keep working on it. So the feedback is constantly coming in Agile, and I appreciate it because then the clients are involved. They know what's happening. So that's why I would say customer context is really important. If you can involve them in one of your demos as well, I think you've achieved a really good kind of automation process and strategy within your team.
That's really important as well. So, how important do you think is a learning curve when it comes to tools and using tools to automate? Do you give it a thought, or do you just go with what's best known across the team? So what kind of a strategy do you take there?
Yeah, I think it's a big research piece. We can't pinpoint on a tool specifically. There's no best tool. As I said, there's no silver bullet, as they say, but it's about what you have available, number one. If it's not available, then you research. I would say pick 2 to 3 tools, find benefits and disadvantages of each, and then finally use one as your framework and work on the framework on that tool. So that's the kind of thing. And it's a massive learning curve. Someone who's coming from a manual testing background to automation, from my experience, I was purely shocked. I would run away from code, as I said, but I thought I'll take this challenge and see if I can do it. And BDD was something that really suited me because I was understanding what I'm testing in layman terms and then adding basically the source code behind it. So I think it's a huge learning curve, but if you have the ambition and the challenge to take it, go for it.
That's great. And you also touched in your session regarding the shift left of automation and why it is so important in this fast-paced world. What are your thoughts on the shift right part of things and automating those?
You should always shift right to shift left, I believe. It should be a fuller process rather than just shifting left. You have to see what you have already and improve on that before you shift left 100%. So even this morning there was talks around, and I was mentioning something around that. So I always said that it's not always about shifting left. You have to also think about the shift right too, to understand procedures and processes in a deeper way, to basically have a product that will run smoothly, that will bring more value and efficiency in a team. So that's what I would kind of put in a nutshell.
Great. So we just have 5 minutes left for this webinar to end. So I'd like to ask a really interesting one, and for a few of the folks here as well. Uh, what made you take that step to get into automation? How did you embrace it, or how did you, take it to the next stage and help accelerate your testing career? So, do you want to give any final words on this?
Yeah, sure. I actually, the company I was working for at that time, they decided to completely scrap manual and go into automation. That's where the change happened. And I just took it as a challenge. I embraced it. I learned from the senior testers because they were really good at JavaScript and C#. So I was like, I'll side by side do the testing and also learn from you, because I want to be good at this. And I don't want to delay projects or sprints because of my coding experience. I will say one thing: coding is something that's inbuilt in you. If you can code, you're very lucky. But if you're coming from my side, like I was never keen to code, I found it a little tricky. But there is so much resource out there today that you can definitely enhance your skills by going through those codes. And guess what? There's codeless automation now as well, which is the best thing. So I think I embraced it in that way. I understood it. I saw the value in it. I started enjoying it. And that's how I thought, yes, automation is something that we should have in our company, in our teams, to drive less repetitive tasks and big things like regression that can be part of automation tests, and we can focus on exploratory testing. So that's how I kind of slowly bought in the process and the strategies around that.
Awesome. Exactly. There is no denial, we shouldn't be doing exploratory testing, but leverage automation where you can, and, avoid the redundancies. So I'll take one more question since we have some time. So Philippi asked, what are the important things to measure for reporting and metrics for automation efforts?
So I think first of all, have the important things would be the kind of the number of tests you're creating, the number of merges you're making can be important as well for some teams. The amount of time you took to resolve an automation test, which had a bug, for example, that could be important. How would I put this one? I don't know how to put it in a sentence, but how you can divide your tests between critical tests. That could be a check as well, how many critical tests we have versus low priority or automation tests as well. You can check your defects, as one of my slides said. The percentage of defects being raised by these tests, are they more than what we would with manual, or are they less? And if they're less, then what could be the reason? Maybe we need to do a bit of exploratory testing. Other things for automation that I would think would be, I think mainly my focus would be, first of all, to settle into automation before having KPIs ready, because first I want to see if my POC, my automation tests are in a place where I can continue to enhance. Once I'm in that comfortable and confident place where the tests are running fine, they're adding value, they're basically they're saving us maybe 2-3 hours of work. That's when I see that repetitive sort of standard and ways of working, I would then, after a few months, decide what are my important KPIs now, and dig deeper into that, and then showcase this back to the management after 6 months or 1 year of running, that this is what we could prove back to you after doing automation. So I hope I kind of helped you there, Philippe.
So there's just an extension to that, and yeah, I think I will take that as well. Is more about any sort of matrix you have prepared when it comes to apps and systems, when you're evaluating any apps and systems. So this is asked for Richard.
Yeah, I think work on your testability matrix as a team. Come up with questions that are important within your team and see how each team member is answering, not just managers, everyone, even developers. So involve everyone, have a collaborative testability matrix session and see what is it that is important to each and every member when it comes to testability, and then decide from there. So I would say testability matrix is the most important one that you should be focusing on.
Awesome. So I think we are on time and we've taken all the questions that we had. So thank you, audience, for being there. I hope you had an insightful session, and thank you, Laveena, on behalf of the Q
Thank you.
community. It was a real honor to have you and enlighten the community to embrace automation and share your insights. So I hope your suitcase
Thank
for
you so
everyone is
much.
full and it's as heavy as it
Yes,
can get.
to start testing.
So go ahead,
Thank you
happy
so much.
testing, have a good day, and thank you for giving your Thursday an hour for us. Cheers. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.